Kennedy was a very popular leader, and his assassination in 1963 was a shock to the country and the world.
Born into the affluent Kennedy family on May 29, 1917, in Brookline, Massachusetts, John F. Kennedy was immersed in a world of privilege and political ambition. As the second of 9 children, he grew up in a household where intellectual curiosity, athletic prowess, and public service were highly valued. His father, Joseph P. Kennedy Sr., was a shrewd businessman and influential figure in Democratic politics. Despite his privileged upbringing, Kennedy faced personal challenges. A serious spinal injury suffered during his college years at Harvard University would plague him for the rest of his life. Yet, he persevered, graduating with honors in 1940. The outbreak of World War II marked a turning point in Kennedy's life. Eager to serve his country, he enlisted in the United States Navy in 1941. Initially rejected due to health issues, he eventually secured a commission with the help of his influential father. Assigned to the Pacific Theater, Kennedy commanded a PT boat, a small, high-speed vessel tasked with harassing Japanese ships. In August 1943, his boat was rammed and sunk by a Japanese destroyer, resulting in the loss of 2 crew members. Kennedy, displaying exceptional courage and leadership, managed to save his remaining crew by swimming several miles to a nearby island. This ordeal earned him the Navy and Marine Corps Medal and solidified his reputation as a war hero. Returning to the United States after the war, John F. Kennedy was eager to translate his wartime heroics into political capital. Leveraging his family's political connections and his own burgeoning reputation, he embarked on a career in public service. In 1946, Kennedy won election to the United States House of Representatives, representing a district in Massachusetts. The House provided a platform for the young congressman to hone his political skills and gain national exposure. Kennedy's political ambitions extended beyond the House of Representatives. In 1952, he successfully ran for the United States Senate, representing Massachusetts. By the late 1950s, John F. Kennedy had emerged as a leading contender for the Democratic presidential nomination. His youthful vigor, coupled with his war hero status and his family's political legacy, made him a compelling candidate for the presidency. The 1960 presidential election pitted him against Republican Vice President Richard Nixon in one of the closest contests in American history. The campaign was marked by intense scrutiny of both candidates. On November 8, 1960, Kennedy defeated Nixon by a narrow margin, becoming the youngest person ever elected president. His victory marked a new era in American politics, as the nation was poised to enter a period of rapid social and cultural change. The inauguration of John F. Kennedy as the 35th President of the United States on January 20, 1961. Kennedy's inaugural address was a powerful and inspiring call to service.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
On March 1, 1961, Kennedy signed an executive order, officially establishing the Peace Corps. This bold initiative aimed to send American volunteers to developing countries to assist in areas such as education, agriculture, and healthcare. The Peace Corps rapidly gained momentum, with thousands of young Americans eager to serve. Before his inauguration, John F. Kennedy was briefed on a plan by the CIA developed during the Eisenhower administration to train Cuban exiles for an invasion of their homeland. The plan anticipated that the Cuban people and elements of the Cuban military would support the invasion. The ultimate goal was to overthrow the communist regime and the establishment of a non-communist government friendly to the United States. On April 17, 1961, 1,400 Cuban exiles launched what became a botched invasion at the Bay of Pigs on the south coast of Cuba. The Bay of Pigs invasion, a CIA-backed military operation to overthrow Fidel Castro's communist regime in Cuba, was a significant setback for the Kennedy administration. However, the operation encountered numerous problems from the outset. Airstrikes intended to neutralize the Cuban Air Force were ineffective, and the invasion force faced stiff resistance from Cuban military units. The Cuban Missile Crisis, a 13-day confrontation between the United States and the Soviet Union in October 1962, stands as one of the most perilous moments in human history. The discovery of Soviet nuclear missile sites in Cuba brought the world to the brink of nuclear war. Kennedy opted for a naval blockade of Cuba, a strategy that increased tensions but also provided an opportunity for diplomacy. behind the scenes, intense negotiations took place between Washington and Moscow. Ultimately, a deal was reached. The Soviet Union would remove its missiles in exchange for a pledge from the United States not to invade Cuba. President Kennedy met with Soviet Premier Khrushchev in the city of Vienna in June 1961, just 5 weeks after the catastrophic failure of the United States-sponsored invasion of Cuba at the Bay of Pigs. Khrushchev took a tough stance at the summit. He declared his plan to cut off Western access to Berlin and warned war if the United States or its allies attempted to prevent it. By the fall of 1963, President John F. Kennedy and his political advisors were preparing for the next presidential campaign. Although he had not formally announced his candidacy, it was clear that President Kennedy was going to run, and he seemed confident about his chances for re-election. At the end of September, the president traveled west, speaking in 9 different states in less than a week. The trip was meant to put a spotlight on natural resources and conservation efforts. But JFK also used it to sound out themes such as education, national security, and world peace for his run in 1964. The events that unfolded on November 22, 1963, remains one of the most shocking and enduring phenomena in American history. The tragedy unfolded in broad daylight as the presidential motorcade, on the way to the Trade Mart where the president was scheduled to speak at a luncheon in Dallas, Texas. Crowds of excited people lined the streets and waved to the Kennedys. The car turned off Main Street at Dealey Plaza around 12:30 p.m. As it was passing the Texas School Book Depository, chaos erupted as the sound of gunfire ripped through the plaza. President Kennedy had been shot, and Governor John Connally of Texas wounded. The car raced towards Parkland Memorial Hospital, but little could be done for the president as he succumbed to his injuries and was pronounced dead shortly after 1 p.m. The nation was plunged into a state of shock and disbelief. The assassination of the young, charismatic president was a profound loss that reverberated across the globe. The perpetrator, Lee Harvey Oswald, an employee at the Texas School Book Depository, was arrested shortly after the shooting. However, before he could stand trial, he was fatally shot on live television by Jack Ruby, a local nightclub owner. The circumstances surrounding both killings have fueled decades of speculation and conspiracy theories. On Monday, November 25, 1963, President Kennedy was laid to rest in Arlington National Cemetery. The funeral was attended by heads of state and representatives from more than 100 countries, with untold millions more watching on television. Afterward, at the gravesite, Mrs. Kennedy and her husband's brothers, Robert and Edward Kennedy, lit an eternal flame. As people throughout the nation and the world struggled to make sense of a senseless act and to articulate their feelings about President Kennedy's life and legacy, many recalled these famous words from his inaugural address.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. My fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America will do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of man.
The assassination of President Kennedy marked a turning point in American history. It forced the nation to confront its vulnerabilities and the fragility of leadership. The event also sparked a national conversation about violence, political extremism, and the role of the media. The legacy of John F. Kennedy is inextricably linked to the tragedy of his death. His assassination solidified his place in the national psyche as a martyr and a symbol of American idealism.